O God, we pray for the people of the borough of Maidstone, for all those living in our council wards. We pray for the young people, for families living and working in our area, for the elderly, and especially for anyone struggling at the moment in any need or difficulty. We thank you for our borough councillors, for our mayor, for council staff, and for all those seeking to make Maidstone Borough a more vibrant and prosperous community where everyone can realise their potential. We pray for our councillors that you would guide and strengthen them in their service to our local infrastructure, to our green spaces, our homes and communities. We pray especially for this meeting this evening. We pray for wisdom and inspiration in all the discussions, and that the decisions made will benefit all the people in our borough. Hear our prayer, O God. Amen.
Before we commence proceedings, may I take this opportunity to advise you that if a fire alarm does sound, please remain seated, and members of the Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. These proceedings this evening will be webcast and recorded by the council, but will anybody else be recording or filming them? Simply ask this to let people know if this will be happening. No? Okay. Thank you. Apologies for absence. I've received apologies for absence from councillors Cannon and Mortimer. Are there any other apologies? Councillor English?
I'm told that Councillor Wilby is ill.
Okay.
Or apologises.
That was it, was it? Councillor Parfitt-Reid.
I believe Councillor Hasty might be late.
Thank you. Any others? No? Okay. Are there any applications? Are there any apologies? For anything? No? Are there any applications for dispensations?
There have been no applications.
Yep. I didn't catch that. There have been no applications. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of interest by members or officers? None. Thank you. Is it agreed that the items on the agenda be taken in public as proposed? Are there any disclosures? Sorry, I've missed one. Are there any disclosures of lobbying? Anybody been lobbied? Is it agreed that items on the agenda be taken in public as proposed? Agreed. Item 7. Are the minutes of the extraordinary meeting of the Borough Council held on the 27th of September 2023 agreed as a correct record? Thank you. Are the minutes of the meeting of the Borough Council held on 27th of September 2023 agreed as a correct record? Mayor's announcements. Right. I will say what I've been up to, and I can find the page. There we are. Right. Being halfway through my mayoral year, and my invitations have been many and varied. Visiting local care homes, meeting residents and staff, some homes in beautiful old houses that have been adapted for their new use, some in state-of-art new buildings with fantastic facilities. I met Her Royal Highness Princess Anne on her visit to Maidstone, which was a very nice thing to touch base with her again. I've had quite a bit of contact with her over the years with different memorials that she's unveiled and I've built. We had a spectacular ceremony of granting HMS Kent the freedom of the county. Fantastic event, and Councillor Cook sitting there very quietly and read. Anyway, his thanks are given by this council. I have in 1 week, however, one thing I was told when I became the mayor was you have to be careful what you eat because you put on weight. I've not done badly so far, but I've eaten Nepalese food, Indian food, Chinese food, and Thai food all in 1 week. And so not put a pound on. No cooking for me. No, that's true. I'm trying hard to not to put on weight and just about winning, I think. My latest highlight was my very first visit to a pantomime. That's oh yes, I did. as did other members of this council. Fantastic evening and well presented, well worth going to see. The only thing I would suggest, don't sit in the 3 front seats. But a brilliant event and well put together by the actors. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Oh, yes, I did. I've met some wonderful people and I've made lots of new friends in different boroughs, actually. And I've had a wonderful 6 months and I'm looking forward to the next 6 months with the help from our civic officers, Russell, Ray, and Julie, who work very hard behind the scenes to make this mayoralty work. And I thank them very much for that. Plus the officers with whom we couldn't do without. Who's got a phone going? I think so.
For the mayor's charity.
Yes, I've been told that's £5 for the mayor's charity. Anyway, thank you very much. And we move on, otherwise we'll be here all evening. Petitions. No petitions. There are no petitions this evening. Question and answer session for local residents. I've received notification that Mr. Mike Summersgill wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member for Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development. Here he is.
Thank you, Mayor. Question for Councillor Cooper. The former ICI pesticide Syngenta site at Yelding has been undergoing significant earth-moving works this year with the creation of what appears to be a significant open body of standing water, where a designated conveyance channel is to be constructed in 2024. Under planning application MA 22501299, a groundwater monitoring plan was approved by MBC just over 1 year ago, which refers to frequency of monitoring during each phase of construction, an annual monitoring event, plus weekly monitoring during a flood event. What monitoring information on chemicals in the standing floodwater, groundwater and the adjacent River Medway has the Council received since the Condition 11 approval during the recent ongoing construction works?
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I thank Mr. Summersgill for his question. So under the Planning Permission for the site, the Environment Agency required a groundwater monitoring and management plan, and this was made a condition of the applicable planning permission. The plan submitted by the developer pursuant to this states monitoring will be carried out during the construction of the approved development and on an annual basis, and more frequently in flood events. The Environment Agency assessed this and advised it was acceptable, and so the plan was approved in October of last year. Following this, a submission in March of this year provided details of the precise monitoring that will be carried out for the first two phases of the development, which includes the floodwater conveyance channel. The Environment Agency assessed this and advised it was acceptable, and so the details were approved in July. The approved plans require the results of the monitoring are submitted to the Environment Agency as they are the statutory regulators. I understand that the works started in late August this year and approved monitoring is continually being carried out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cooper. Mr. Summersgill, do you wish to ask a supplementary question?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Should the council be contacting the contractor to get updated information on any possible soil contaminant disturbance caused by these excavation works, especially for the workers on site and the adjacent properties and the River Medway, to ensure they're safe from any increase in contaminant health risk?
Councillor Cooper.
I believe very much that this is the remit of the Environment Agency, but if there are any specific concerns, then obviously the Council and the Environment Agency would be delighted to learn of those. Thank you.
Thank you. I've received notification from Ms. Kimmy Millam, who wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member for Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development.
Good evening. I'd like to ask the relevant council member how many parking permits are issued and how many parking spaces are there in total in the permit zone of W1 and W2, please?
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you once again, Mr. Mayor, and I thank Mrs. Millam for her question. So permit zone West 1 currently has got 635 live parking permits, and West 2 has 991 live parking permits. The resident parking bays aren't delineated, so it's impossible to give a precise answer as to exactly how many spaces there are. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Millam, do you wish to ask a supplementary question of the Cabinet Member for Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development arising out of your original question or the reply?
Yes, I do. I just wanted to ask that given the pressure on parking in W1 and W2, why did the council refuse to revoke permitted development rights for HMOs in this area?
It's different.
The council was in no position to revoke permitted development rights. However, we are working on policies that would limit any potential harms of houses of multiple occupancy, not just in this area, but across the borough, and that includes the limit of parking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope that somewhat answers some of your questions. I've received notification that Mrs. Rachel Rodwell wishes to ask a question of the Leader of the Council.
Thank you. Can the Leader of the Council tell me when the draft town centre strategy that the Council has spent 150,000 on will be published?
Councillor Burton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The draft of the town centre strategy is not ready yet. I don't think anyone would thank this council to bring forward a draft that is not complete in all matters. One of the lessons we learned from the process is that the matters of the town centre strategy are actually complex. There are huge commercial issues that need to be addressed. There's much needs to be understood. And I think we've reached a stage where we need some further evidence to actually support some of our deliberations moving forwards. This week, I've been working directly with fellow groups leaders, and also the town centre users group, ward members, updating them, and a full report on where we're at with the development of the strategy will come to the relevant pack on December the 7th for further discussion on December the 20th. That's the current situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. Mrs. Rodwell, do you wish to ask a supplementary question of the Leader of the Council arising out of your original question or the reply?
Yes, please. So in view of the fact that you need to get more evidence and get more people together to be going through this, has the council considered asking residents directly in the case of maybe a citizens' assembly, for instance, so that the local residents would feel not disengaged in the process, and drawing upon the wide range of expertise within the community? Is that something ever that's been considered?
Councillor Burton.
Again, Mr. Mayor, in designing the consultation process to accompany this plan making process, engagement with the public has always been part of what is planned. What we intend to do is to have a draft which will have all of the evidence sitting behind it that will be published for people to consider, and then an engagement of public consultation. We've also got some particular intentions to consult with younger members of our community that are not yet ready to vote. You know, when one starts to consider what nighttime economy might look in the years ahead, perhaps they're the people we should be asking. And some of those, to coin a phrase, and I hate this phrase, the harder to reach parts of the communities, we will be looking to engage with them. So public consultation will sit front and centre as part of the process moving forwards, but we need to get all the information that we can together first, a draft for consideration, and then we must listen.
Thank you very much. Just record that Miss Hastie has entered the council chamber. I've been received notification. Oh yes. Michelle, have you been lobbied or have any interest to declare at the present time?
No, I haven't.
Thank you very much. Received notification Mr. Steve Healy wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member for Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development. Sorry? Oh, gosh. Sorry, apologies. Things moving quickly. Could Ms. Hammond come up and speak? And I do apologise for leaving you out there.
No problem. Thank you. Sorry. Helen Whately MP said in her response to your recent main modifications consultation about heathlands, there is also serious concern locally about the impact of the development on the River Stour, as raised in the consultation by Fish Legal. They say that the plans present a material risk of environmental harm to fish and protected species and habitats, and that these risks are not being sufficiently considered. Why is heathland still being promoted and taken forward by this council when the risk of environmental harm is not being managed?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very careful to answer this question on behalf of the council as promoter, but this council believes that heathlands can be delivered to deliver an exemplar of garden settlement, new development, with infrastructure, new schools, with doctors' facilities, with a self-contained solution to the sewage without having to tap into the existing sewage works. We believe that it can be delivered with more than 20% biodiversity net gain, and we believe that we can make this an excellent new community.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Do you feel the environmental impact of heathlands has been sufficiently analysed by the council, and are those details available to the public?
Mr. Burton.
Thank you. The planning considerations on this matter are for others, but at this point, they are fully in the hands of the planning inspector. I am mindful that he undertook a targeted consultation on the Heathlands water environment in July 23, and then asked us to proceed with the main modifications. It is for the inspector to give the final verdict, and we'll all wait to hear what that says.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. I have I've received notification that Mr. Steve Healy wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member for Planning and Infrastructure and Economic Development. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hopefully you can hear me. In relation to the draft Maidstone Local Plan Review and the most recent main modifications, how many acres of greenfield land in the borough are being proposed for development sites up to 2040?
Mr. Mayor, thank you once again, and thank you very much to Mr. Healy for his question. So it should be noted as a bit of context that the plan period for the local plan review is until 2038 rather than 2040, and that the main modifications are not yet agreed, having been subject to recent public consultation. Therefore, the figures that I will quote are on that basis. So the local plan review allocates sites both on brownfield and greenfield land. The total area of greenfield site allocations in the local plan review is approximately 351 acres, and the total area of heathlands and lids and garden communities is approximately 1,310 acres. Although it should be noted that these developments will continue to build out well beyond the plan period for the local plan review. So not all of the quantum of that development continues in that time. These figures are also inclusive of all the green space, open space, amenity space, and other on-site infrastructure provision requirements, meaning that the total net developable area figure will be considerably less than the numbers which I have quoted. Thank you.
Mr. Healy, do you have a supplementary question of the Cabinet Member for Planning arising out of your original question or the reply?
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor. As the Cabinet Member probably knows, Helen Whately MP's survey of 2,000 local residents earlier in the year found that the overwhelming majority wanted high-quality farmland and greenfield land protected. Does the Cabinet Member think that the Maidstone Local Plan and the 1,600 or so acres of greenfield being proposed for development is consistent with local residents' views and that of his Conservative government and local Member of Parliament?
Councillor Cooper.
Yes, I do. We balance those 2,000 views against the other 170 odd thousand residents within the borough, many of whom are short of quality accommodation at the moment, many of whom rely on high quality employment land, all of which is being delivered in this local plan review. We continue to make very difficult decisions to do with our chronic housing shortage. And as I'm sure Mr. Healy is aware, the government has an annual housing target, and we are doing our best to step up to the plate and deliver our portion of that for the benefit of all of our residents.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cooper. Moving on, I have received notification that Mrs. Kate Moore wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member for Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development. Ms. Moore.
I'd like to thank you for letting me put the following question to you. Many 5G phone masts are being installed in and around Maidstone, and often these are situated very close to nurseries, schools, business premises and homes. These masts emit radio frequency radiation, which in 2011 was classified by the World Health Organization as a possible human carcinogen. Masts emit this radiation continuously, i.e. 24 hours per day and for 65 days of the year. The UK implements the radiation limits provided by the International Commission of Non-Ionising Radiation Protection, or ICNIRP. When a planning application is submitted, telecoms companies declare that their phone masts will comply with ICNIRP's limit and that exclusion zones will be in place to protect the public. However, the ICNIRP guidelines state that, quote, metallic implants may alter or perturb EMFs, that's electromagnetic fields in the body, and the utilisation of conducting materials for medical procedures is beyond the scope of these guidelines, end quote. This appears to place the health of people with medical metallic implants, for example, cardiac pacemakers or implanted defibrillators, at risk. Their situation is aggravated if they live or work in close proximity to a phone mast, as they could be within the exclusion zones. Plans showing these zones are not made available to the public, and so affected individuals wouldn't even know that they were at risk. My question is, how will Maidstone Borough Council protect people with metallic implants from the radiation from phone masts, and will it require plans showing the exclusion zones to be made publicly available by telecoms companies when they submit a planning application for a phone mast? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper, can you respond, please?
Mr. Mayor, once again, thank you very much, and I thank Mrs. Moore for her question. By way of context, the installation of electronic communications equipment in most cases constitutes permitted development under secondary legislation, meaning that appropriate equipment can be erected without the need for planning permission from this authority. The telecommunications companies do need prior approval authorisation from this council as the local planning authority, however. Prior approval procedure requires submission of various documents, including plans showing location and equipment dimensions to demonstrate that the prior approval criteria apply. The prior approval policy and process does not allow the local planning authority, in this case the council, to directly consider health considerations when determining mast proposals. However, all proposals for telecommunications development should be submitted with an International Commission on Non-Ionising Radiation Protection certificate. This certificate confirms that proposed developments meet the relevant safety requirements, which includes exclusion zones around the antenna. In relation to metal implants, there is no requirement of statutory consideration of metal implants by the council. Any document submitted as part of the prior approval process is loaded onto the NBC public portal and can be viewed by the public. Ofcom and central government would be the appropriate bodies to approach in regard to seeking further information on health and safety standards, or on additional information on such exclusion zones. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ms. Moore, do you wish to ask a supplementary question of the Cabinet?
I do.
Arising from your original question or the reply.
Who will be liable for any successful claims against damage to health after a telecoms mast has been put up, especially in the planning applications which display a company name that is not on the Ofcom register and was dissolved in 2015?
Councillor Cooper.
I'm not convinced that anyone would need to be liable because I think there are appropriate safeguards in place already. However, specifically in answer to your question, I don't know the answer. I certainly will respond to you in writing in due course so that we can get that as a matter of fact. Thank you.
Ms. Moore, is that acceptable? Thank you. Received notification that Councillor English wishes to ask a question of the Leader of the Council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Cooper, the initial biodiversity action plan set out by NBC was acknowledged as one of the best plans in the United Kingdom. Since then, there has been a significant lack of progress on many aspects of the plan, at least as far as can be ascertained, as several update reports on the progress of the plan appear to have not taken place as scheduled. Can the Leader of the Council, sorry, I said Mr. Cooper because everyone's been asking you questions, so I got in the group. Can the Leader of the Council update us on the current progress that's been achieved towards targets within the plan? And I apologise, I just got in the habit of asking Paul because everyone...
Now, who's going? Councillor Burton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor English. I'm not aware of any missing updates. The plan itself dictated that there would be 2 updates per year and a review annually as well. So I believe that all of those reports have come forth. Whatever amount of progress we've achieved so far will never be enough in my book. We've got to push harder, faster and further with our commitment to delivering our action plan. I note, on one hand, with some satisfaction that recently, you'll all recall that we were awarded a very high position in the ranking for the plan itself. And then more recently, there's been an assessment of the delivery of that plan. And Maidstone Borough Council ranked 35th out of 186 councils. Now, if you read the small print, the authors of that report are quick to point out that they actually think that delivery across all councils is woefully slow and behind. So I don't take any complacency, but I am pleased that we're at the front edge of getting on and doing this. The next report is due February 2024, and I hope that everybody will be there to contribute and make further suggestions about how we deliver faster and more effectively.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. Councillor English, do you wish to ask a supplementary question of the Leader of the Council?
I could debate what meetings the plan could have been updated, could have been presented to members and updates given, and meetings were cancelled because of supposed lack of business. However, the important thing is progress towards the plan going forward. So in February, we would hope to see significant progress. If that is not the case, could I ask the Leader of the Council at that point, given that the last time we looked at this plan, there were significant issues in terms of delivery of the targets, to actually reconsider our approach to this, because the approach the administration has taken is that climate change is so important that it's everyone's responsibility. Can I ask you to at least look at that, because there is a very serious issue in many organisations where something is everyone's responsibility, it's no one's responsibility specifically. So can I ask you, if the situation is that we are still not delivering targets, when the report comes forward in February, to significantly reassess whether we're doing this in the right way, because frankly climate change is a very important issue, even if some people in central government don't think so, and we need to deliver on this.
Councillor Burton.
Thank you. Well, I think then in response to that, I should mention a few things that are happening and are underway. £3,126,536 worth of bids have been submitted this month for large-scale retrofitting projects, and we'll await notification on that. We got our bid in within 4 minutes of the opening of the deadline, having previously been unsuccessful in another round, but we're beholden to others now to decide our fate. But there's no lack of effort on our part. The Eco Hub, I'm sure you all visited it, was a tremendous success, and we had even more visitors this year than previous. There are 7 solar PV projects that are currently under investigation underway to deliver Depot upgrades. We've increased significantly the supply of power to the depot, additional EV charges, total of 30 chargers, and a growing fleet of 13 vehicles so far. And each time a vehicle is renewed, there's another opportunity. Tree planting and rewilding projects underway in early 24, another 5,800 odd trees. We need more people to offer land for tree planting, but this council is there with the funding to plant those trees as and when the land is offered up. You'll all be aware of our allocation in the Rural England Prosperity Fund. We particularly targeted that at community facilities to award money to allow them to upgrade their community halls or the like, so that not only does that reduce their running costs as important social infrastructure, but also requires acts as real life examples of what can be achieved, embracing solar, air source heat pumps, battery technology, insulation and the like. We're getting on, we're doing that. The first awards are already out. We have now implemented the regular monitoring of this council's carbon footprint. I want to go further with actually some logical carbon accounting. Some of us who underwent the carbon literacy training, we talked about this. I think there's cross-party consensus on the need to do these things, and I see nods from the other side, which I appreciate. Thank you. Look, I could go on reading from this list. There's a lot being done. Let's stop knocking what we are doing, acknowledge that we are taking good strides forwards, and also all acknowledge that we need to do more, and we do it together, and we need to be more ambitious. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. I've received notification that Councillor J. Sams wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member for Environmental Services.
Thank you. Can I ask the Cabinet Member for Environmental Services if he can please explain to residents, when looking at their green bin with no lid on, how a bin is serviceable and functionable? Thank you.
Councillor Garton.
Councillor Sams, technically, of course, a bin can be used without a lid. But I agree with the sentiments of your questions, and that's why I've been working very hard with officers to see what operational arrangements can be made early to consistently change the bin replacements. I can confirm that missing bins qualify as dysfunctional and thus will qualify for a free change out. The communication on the website will be updated in due course.
Thank you, Councillor Garton. Councillor Sams, do you wish to ask a supplementary question of the Cabinet Member for Environmental Services?
In the light of what Councillor Garton has said, and I just confirm that I heard you say that if they do not have a lid, they will be replaced free of charge.
That's correct, and a new bin has been delivered to your resident this morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garton. Thank you, Janetta Sams. Right. Where are we here? I think that's it. Can I call upon the Leader of the Council to submit his report on current issues? Councillor Burton, you may speak for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members, I'm going to be as short and succinct as I can this evening. I'm sure we've got much bigger debates yet before us. Just for a moment, let's just pause. Look around the world, there are many, many bad things happening. And then I look at Maidstone, and you know what? Maidstone is pretty good. We should be proud of Maidstone. You might be aware, of our work supporting our community through the food larders that we're operating. I'm sure you're all aware of the donation centre that we're manning in them all. The outpouring of generosity and compassion and sheer love from Maidstone residents has been astounding. Speaking to some of the people that have been working there, and they say it with almost tears in their eyes. The man came in, he said to me, "What do you need?" And then went off and came back with 2 shopping bags of whatever it was, children's toys or other things. Maidstone is a wonderful place. It has some pretty wonderful people. This council does a pretty good job too. Just listening with officers earlier, the emergency planning arrangements that are being put in place for the winter period. I don't think there's many councils that do it as well as it is done here. We have a superb team. We actually deliver pretty good for our residents. Of course, we can always do better. We're here to find what better means in what we do next and what we do tomorrow. But overall, I'm very proud to be part of this council at Maidstone. I'm really proud of Maidstone residents, of their love and their generosity. And I think if we bear that in the heart of our decision making moving forwards, we will not do too many bad things.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. I'll now call upon the other group leaders to respond, focusing primarily but not exclusively on the issues raised by the leader. I understand that the independent group does not wish to respond and would rather ask questions at the appropriate time. The other group leaders each have up to 5 minutes. Councillor English, the leader of the Democrat group, Liberal Democrat group.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, we're coming up to the beginning of the Christmas period, so I won't interject too much of a note of controversy. I will say that in general I agree with Councillor Burton's remarks about the people of Maidstone, with a few exceptions that you get in any community. The people of Maidstone are generally a fairly generous group of people. Like many towns and rural areas come to that, we have our fair share of problems, not least our increasing challenge when dealing with homelessness. It is a challenge to a lot of local authorities, but it is a challenge to Maidstone specifically, and I don't think there's much disagreement across the chamber that we need to treat that as a priority going forward. I would say there are some differences between the political parties, but in general, compared to many local authorities I've seen up and down the country, there is less partisanship than in many, and more of a spirit of working together. On that phrase, I would hope that in relation to what some issues we were discussing earlier, part of what we need to do, taking the local plan and the biodiversity plan forward, is to actually look, as Councillor Burton said some time ago, at new formal and semi-formal and natural open space. It's no good just having a local plan or a town centre strategy come to that, or a biodiversity plan that is all about housing and economic development, and minimising the damage of that. Important though those things are, we need to have places where the public, both residents, businesses and people who wish to visit Maidstone can relax, and where other species than human beings can flourish. I'd be interested to actually take this rewilding project forward because, you know, I mean, we are in danger. Over the years, we've lost a huge number of street trees, for example, in Maidstone. If there's anything we can do working with KCC to redress that, bearing in mind our utilities problem in some of the roads and pavements, we should be doing that. And I would hope that working together with the leader of the council and his group, when we look at the biodiversity plan in February, and as we take these other planning documents forward, we can really have a greener Maidstone, because it shouldn't just be a sentiment in documents and strategies. It should be a living reality for the people and other species that inhabit Maidstone. So in a spirit of cooperation, I urge all groups on the council to work together to deliver a greener, healthier Maidstone.
Thank you, Councillor English. Councillor Jeffrey, would you like 5 minutes? Thank you. Starting now.
Thank you. Members, I would like to start by offering our deepest sympathies to all those affected by the conflict in Israel and Gaza, including those across our borough who have friends, loved ones, relatives in the region. We have been saddened by the failures to call for an immediate ceasefire, and we really hope that a permanent ceasefire comes soon to allow more aid and the possibility of a long-term resolution. We really believe that Muslims, Jews, people of all faiths and none should feel safe and supported throughout the world, and we of course condemn anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. I wanted to give some good news. I'm really pleased that Tovel Tip has been saved, and I do ask councillors in the Cabinet particularly who are on KCC if they could possibly work with KCC to resolve the problem with access to Medway's tips. That would be really helpful, but I'm really pleased that's happened. I want to pick up on the climate change issue. Clearly, the climate crisis is very much there. It is unfolding so quickly. The last 5 months have been the hottest on record, the last 2 breaching the safe 1.5 degree limit. There is currently an unbearable heat wave in Brazil killing people. Well, for us in Kent, we can expect droughts, floods, heat waves that will kill people, but much of the climate crisis will arrive in small boats on our shores. And I think we agree that the climate change plan does need to go as fast as it could possibly go. And I do welcome the progress that you put forward earlier. But we still have aspects missing. How we're going to tackle the 70% of carbon emissions in the borough based around domestic energy and transport. And there is very little in the plan to cope with the climate change that's already been baked in. How do we adapt to our town and villages to cope with that? We do need radical change, and we need the political will to drive that. And on that latter note, I was quite disappointed at the climate literacy training, which was quite poorly attended. But it's not just climate and biodiversity that needs to be pushing and moving faster. We have now got what I think is a woeful air quality action plan, which seems to say we're going to do very little, yet air pollution continues to kill people across our polluted areas. And months ago, there was an agreement to revise the integrated transport strategy. I can't see any starting of that work. We don't even have, as far as I can tell, a local cycling and walking infrastructure plan. And we are missing out on funding and support from Kent County Council as a result. Our roads remain gridlocked and people are getting angrier. And in case members have forgotten, there is an open sewer that runs through our borough that needs urgent attention. Despite agreement from the Cabinet to consider a rivers task force, the item isn't even on the forward plan. And last month, the Cabinet watered down the water action plan, which is clearly wrong. And we've heard earlier about the missing town centre strategy. And finally, despite the appalling rhetoric from the now former Home Secretary, homelessness is not a lifestyle choice. And I'm really pleased that this council is taking out those long-term leases to help with temporary accommodation. So well done on that. But the numbers have doubled in the last year, and we need to do much, much more. So again, I really want to see lots of action there. There are multiple crises unfolding right now, which is why I was surprised that last week's Cabinet meeting was cancelled due to lack of business. It's kind of feeling a bit like Cobra before COVID, so please, let's try to tackle these crises. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. And now, Councillor Cleater, leader of the Labour group on Maidstone Borough Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Burton, for your report. I think the saddest thing is that we actually need community larders in this day and age. And just for the record, the Labour group will not be sending Christmas cards. We will be making donation to the 2 community larders that are in the area that we represent, which is Shepway, Shepway and Parkwood, although we know there is one in High Street based at Trinity. One of the things that this links into, for me, and it's been mentioned by others, is around homelessness, and that is my one deep worry in our budget situation. The current crisis in homelessness is something that not just we in Maidstone are facing, but throughout the country. The housing system is broken. Central government need to repair it. The current government don't seem to have the will to do it, but we are where we are at the moment. But what I would plead, where we can have some intervention, is that co-production, if you like, which is the buzzword in social care where I work, and where my colleague works in the NHS. There seems to be an increasing fragmentation between the work of social services, the NHS, and local government. And it's all very disjointed. We know this because we work in it. And we will not resolve problems until there's that better working together. I came out of a meeting this week, Councillor Thompson was there, Councillor English witnessed it, where there was a very vulnerable woman who'd been assaulted, who was homeless, who clearly had mental health issues, and really shouldn't be in a position where she was there late, well not even late actually, it was about 8 o'clock, 8:30, being assaulted. And fair play to the police, they were brilliant with her. But what I did notice, because I was there till midnight, sorting things out, giving statements, is the number of homeless people wandering around this area of a night. We have particular problems within Maidstone because we are in the catchment area for probation, we're in the catchment area for people being released from prison, we're in the catchment area for people being released from mental health facilities, usually too soon because there's someone more ill who needs the bed. That puts pressure on our services that we are required to say, find them accommodation. So I suppose my plea is, where you're involved in other organisations, whether it's the NHS, whether it's KCC, like I am, is try and get that joined up working more on the front line rather than meetings that senior people go to where it's all quite friendly. But actually, I can tell you from my employer, the person at the meeting knows very little about what's going on in the front line. The other issue with housing is the housing stock. We need to work to retrofit accommodation and make what we've existingly got fit for purpose. That means that when we decide to build properties, they are fit for the future in terms of installation, in terms of soundproofing, if we're going to make high density accommodation, but also to work with housing associations to retrofit their properties and make sure they're fit for purpose. I don't know one elected member who hasn't got stuff in their inbox saying, I've got mould in my house or my house is too cold, etc. So whilst there are those very generous souls who live and work in Maidstone, and I absolutely agree with that, until there's a coming together of all of us, all authorities, all public services, that we'll be fighting little battles on our own. So my plea would be, at Christmas, if you can go and give a little extra gift, as Councillor Burton described, happened in the mall, then do so. And if you can help out somewhere, do so. But where you've got the power to make that change, please fight to make that change, and whichever organisation you also sit on, because I know a lot of us do here sit on those organisations. And if I don't see you all before Christmas, Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Councillor Cleater. Thank you. Now, Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with the leader's comments about residents in the borough. I think most people have elements of pride in where they live and in Maidstone. I think a lot of people would like things to be better so they could have more pride. But I think there's also quite good community spirit, not necessarily everywhere, but you definitely see it when you go around and get involved in your local areas. So I think we do have sort of positives from our residents we can build on. I think one of the things which we talked about earlier was about biodiversity and so on, and if you like, the green agenda. I think it would be important as we work through the local plan and things like the town centre plan and the climate change and biodiversity plans in future, that we do look at how we can improve people's access to the natural environment. We have too many people, especially in the urban area, who feel cut off from nature. So I think it would be inherent on us to see how we can make our green spaces across the town and across the borough more rich in terms of their ecology and the environment. And Patrick Coates and myself did a small bit at the weekend when we planted 500 trees in a local park in Fan, and we'll be doing some work elsewhere in the area to plant another 300 or 400 trees just at the other side of Christmas. Little community things like that, involving people in things like that, brings nature and the benefits of biodiversity to people's lives. The issue raised by one of my residents earlier in their question about HMOs, I was pleased to hear from the Cabinet that work is being done in terms of looking at our policies on HMOs. Only today I had a resident on the phone for 45 minutes in despair over the proliferation of HMOs, houses of multiple occupancy, in the sort of inner parts of the Fant area, where almost, as to quote them, every time they see a house for sale, people quiver because they think a developer will buy it up and turn it into an HMO. So that if we can bring in some good policies to help preserve family housing in our central areas over perhaps the course of the next year, that would be really good and really welcomed, and that would do a massive amount to help foster pride by residents in their areas, because there is big despair out there in areas which are overrun by HMOs. And just finally, I would like to encourage and welcome, and I know the leader updated us on the 1,000 affordable homes policy only yesterday at the leaders' groups, and I'll just urge all councillors, when over the course of probably next year, early part of next year, we have workshops to look at the impacts and some of the issues we need to take into account to deliver these homes, that we are all pragmatic in terms of how we take it forward, because getting those homes delivered as fast as possible is really important. We don't want to find they get stuck, I don't know, in the planning committee or some process which just delays people from it. So please, colleagues, when we've had those workshops, let's all unite to make sure that we can work with the Cabinet to drive these affordable homes through as fast as possible. And just finally, I'd just like to, as Maureen said, wish everybody a happy Christmas. I know it's a bit early, it's not quite December, but this is the last time we'll all be present together. So I'd like to wish you all and your families a really good Christmas and New Year and festive period. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harper. And the Oakwood Independence Group. Sorry? Yeah. I'm opened up to questions. I call upon Councillor Cox.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. As an independent member, you wonder perhaps why we have made the decision as the independent group to not respond to the leader, and I think it's better that individually we can do so. Over the last 6 months as being Deputy Mayor, I've been to the places that Mr. Mayor hasn't been able to go to. And just wanted to wonder whether the leader would join me and obviously the Mayor, because as we go round, we see a lot of people who are volunteers who help drive our borough and support our council workers, indeed in the museum, with the blue bus, with the so many places we have seen volunteers. And so I hope that as we come to the Christmas period, if you're writing something that will appear somewhere, that you will include those people, because there are many scores and scores of people. There are organisations, Lions clubs, round tables, Rotary clubs, that all provide things and do services to this community and to the borough. And I just wanted to hope that the leader would join me in remembering those people as we come to the Christmas period, and hope that they will continue to do that service throughout into 24.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Any others? We're nodding. Can I invite the leader to respond? Sorry.
Very brief response to that, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Yes, I mean, I alluded to that in what I said. There are many, many organisations, peoples, charities, groups, clubs, organisations doing lots of, and yes, they're what make Maidstone wonderful, and we do remember them, and we do refer to them, and we do thank them.
Are there any more questions on the same subject? No? Next item is, I will now open this item to questions from council members for a period of 15 minutes. We've done that one, haven't we? Yes, I'll put a line through that. I call upon Councillor Cox to, he's been trying all evening. I call upon Councillor Cox to move the recommendation of the Audit, Governance and Standards Committee relating to the committee's annual report to council, recommendation on page 10.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The Audit, Governance and Standards Committee annual report to council for 22-23, which demonstrates how the committee discharges its duties during 22-23, please be noted.
Is that seconded? Councillor Gooch. Is the recommendation agreed? Thank you. Second, Councillor Gooch. Anybody else wish to speak? Good. Moving on, I call upon Councillor Perry to move the recommendation and the report of the Cabinet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the recommendations as set out on page 24 of your agenda papers are approved.
Is that seconded? Councillor Burton. Anyone else wish to speak? No. Is the recommendation agreed? Thank you. Call upon Councillor Cooper to move the recommendation of the Democracy and General Purposes Committee relating to the polling districts and polling places review 2023. That recommendation is on page 27.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the outcome of the polling districts and polling places review 2023 as set out at amended Appendix 1 to the report be agreed.
Seconded by Councillor English. Councillor Round? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to make a point. I'm afraid I'm going to be particularly pedantic. And if we go to section 113 to section 115, I think further clarity is required on the basis of the fact that Headcorn and Sutton Valence Ward people do not vote in Heather House. And from section 1.15, in my opinion, it refers not to Headcorn and Sutton Valence, but refers more to the Bourton, Monchelsea and Charter Sutton area. That leads to confusion. Voters should not be confused. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Councillor Round. Anyone else wish to speak? Right, we've got Councillor Cooper first, Councillor Gooch, and then Councillor English.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. If I may interject at this point, paragraph 1.15 has two supplementary paragraphs, 1 and 2. Indeed, all of that refers to Bourton, Chelsea and Sutton Ward. I think, with respect, Councillor Round is confusing himself with the previous paragraph, 1.14, which doesn't relate at all to the two supplementary paragraphs in 1.15. So I don't think the matter should be confused.
Councillor English.
Councillor Cooper is correct in the substance of the item. The only confusion is caused by the heading of the sub-paragraph, which possibly needs amendment rather than the recommendation itself.
Okay, thank you. And officers will take care of that. Okay. Councillor Gooch, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank the Democratic Services staff and the electoral people for all the hard work. There's been an enormous amount of work that's gone into this, so thanks to the cracking staff we've got. Now, I have to say, I found this pretty difficult to understand right from the word go. And I speak as somebody, I know my patch fairly well. Can you imagine how residents are going to feel about this? What are they going to think next May? I wonder. So my question is, I would like to have reassurance, please, and I'm not sure who the right person is to ask, but we must convey this to our residents somehow, because they will be baffled, I'm sure. The wards will be new, the names will be new, they won't be doing what they did before. They will, actually, there's other stuff. If they want to have a postal vote, they've got to have national insurance, etc. So, and they might have more than one vote, they're going to have more than one. There's a whole plethora of stuff that's behind these invaluable papers. So I would like to suggest, if I may, that we have a special edition of the Borough Insight in black and white, if necessary, to explain to our residents what on earth has gone on, and so that it can help them vote, it will help them know what to think, where to go, and what the hell's going on. Because I really think we need to help our residents understand what's been going on. And I would really like that question answered and followed through. Thank you very much.
Point of information, Mr. Mayor. This is, but before people get off on this discussion, this report is not intended for the elections in May. This is for polling districts between the boundary changes coming into effect. From when the order is laid, right, which is effectively now, and May. These are temporary polling districts and would only be used between now and May if there was a by-election.
Can you sit down,
this
please?
is not what we're going to have in May.
Thank you. Councillor Black. No? Oh, okay. Councillor Blackmore's withdrawn from that. Right. She doesn't want to speak. No. Right. Do we?
Who's going to answer Faye's question?
Right. Now, who wants to answer Faye Gooch's question? Where is she? Is she hiding? Can we talk about it after the meeting? Thank you, Faye. Claudine, yes, as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Regarding the point that Councillor Gooch raised about the Borough Insight, the base budget doesn't have money for the Borough Insight. It hasn't for a while. It's been done with UK Share Prosperity money, and then we've done a joint addition with the BID and partners. But I'm happy to take that away and look at it when we redo the budget in the coming months. So let me take that with me, just that very small part, which was the Borough Insight part. Everything else I'll leave with the Democracy and General Purposes Committee.
Thank you very much. Right. So it's where are we? Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak? Is the recommendation agreed? Good. Right. Now we're moving on to the report of the Democracy and General Purposes Committee. I call upon Councillor Cooper to move the recommendation of the Democracy and General Purposes Committee relating to the parish election cycle order. And the recommendation is on page 24. So page 57, 17. Yes, there we go. Page 57.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I am delighted that the work of the Democracy and General Purposes Committee is getting everyone so excited this evening. So on that note, I will continue, and I move that the alignment of all parish council election cycles with Maidstone Borough Council's election cycle be agreed, with the first such elections to take place in May 2024, and that delegated authority be given to the Director of Strategy, Insight and Governance to put in place the order required to give effect to the Council's resolution.
Thank you, Councillor English. Councillor Mumford. Oh, no? Okay, sorry. Okay.
Very, very briefly, as you probably know, I'm on a number of parish councils. It is a matter of profound relief to parish councils across the borough that this measure is being implemented, because otherwise there would be a great cost, not to the borough council, but to the public purse of parishes, potentially, in organising separate elections. So I have to say that it is great relief to those of us who are parish councillors and to the public in parish areas that this proposal is being brought forward.
And Councillor Mumford?
I was just offering to second it for the reasons that Councillor English has just said. I'm on a parish council, and yeah, the cost would be tremendous to parish councils, and this is logical.
Thank you. Any more? Is the recommendation agreed? Oh, well, that's good. Right. 18, page 57. I call upon Councillor Jeffrey to move the motion related to Kent Minerals and Waste Plan response.
Thank you. As I'm sure members will recall and have read in the briefing notes, we have a large ancient woodland on the outskirts of Maidstone that we share with Tunbridge and Malling. This is Oakland Wood, and it's been put forward to Kent County Council as a site for quarrying of crushed rock. So we have a choice There is a choice between crushed rock for road building effectively and the ancient irreplaceable woodland. You will recall that Councillor Cooper submitted an initial holding response to Kent County Council, one that supported the destruction of these 50 hectares. And I'm sure you'll be aware that following this, the Policy Advisory Committee overwhelmingly voted for a strong letter of opposition to the quarry on that site to be submitted. In response, we know that Councillor Cooper tweaked the language but continued to support the quarry site in his second letter. We also know that that was called into overview and scrutiny, and they were told that it was too late to do anything. And sadly, nothing happened with that call-in after that point. However, it was quite clear to many of us that that decision did not reflect the wishes of many members in this council, and I do understand the cabinet system can go against that. Earlier this month, at their Environment and Transportation Committee, Kent County Council confirmed that it was delaying the decision on sites due to the level of opposition expressed by, well, almost everyone. Opposition including Tunbridge and Malling, everyone except this council basically. KCC officers also stated that they would take into consideration points emailed to the members that were emailed to the members prior to that meeting. So it seems to me that that boat has not yet sailed. KCC will be working on their sites plan over the coming year, and this council does have an opportunity to express its opinion to Kent County Council. So I therefore move that this council states that Hermitage Quarry should not be further extended into Oakenwood embalming, an irreplaceable ancient woodland, and asks that the Cabinet reconsiders its support for KCC's plans. And I further move that this motion is referred directly to the Cabinet from the Council. And Mr Mayor, I would like a right of reply at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Councillor English.
I'm not going to rehearse the detail of the scrutiny review, the call-in and all the recommendations. I understand the pressure of time from some of these consultations and how difficult it can be to actually meet deadlines, especially with a call-in. That's why sometimes as Chairman of Overview and Scrutiny I've had to accept urgent decisions, or I haven't had to, but I have chosen to accept urgent decisions. We did have a less than satisfactory situation, to put it mildly, with the timelines for the consultation responses initially on Oakenwood. It is a matter of considerable interest to the public of Maidstone and Tunbridge and Malling, to be fair. So we are where we are. I don't want to go back through who was responsible and how things could have been done differently or better. What I'd like us to do is, as was discussed but couldn't be enacted at that point at the scrutiny call-in, is ask the Cabinet, given that the County Council are somewhat reconsidering their position, to consider in Cabinet making a response taking into account the views and representations that have been made by a large section of the public. I'm not asking you to commit to the great detail of what that response will be. What I'm asking you to do is consider referring to to refer to the Cabinet this issue for reconsideration of all the issues. It's all very well talking about rewilding and planting trees, but we do have to bear in mind that this is a proposal that even its proponents recognise will considerably cause environmental damage. So we do need to consider that. I have to say, as someone who's been in the planning field one way or another since God was a young man, that the response that we made previously did not, in my opinion, weigh all the factors into account that we should have weighed in terms of biodiversity and the natural environment. It was on a technical level a deficient response. Whatever response we send, and I hope it is one of strong opposition, but you're the cabinet, you need to look at this. It needs to weigh the factors properly and come to a professional, full deliberation. If you're going to go against strong national planning policy guidance, this council needs to give more than a few reasons that it's commercially convenient. You have to give planning reasons to act on a consultation which is on a minerals and waste plan that meet planning criteria. So yes, economic development can be a planning criteria. I'm not saying it is irrelevant, it's not, but you need to, we need as a council to weigh all the aspects properly. I hope that you come to a decision to oppose it, but what we're asking tonight is not the decision to oppose it as such, it's a decision to reconsider it properly and in a timely and considered manner.
Thank you, Councillor English. Yes, if you wouldn't mind.
You need to switch it. Councillor English, at the end of the proposer's statement, Councillor Jeffrey made a specific request that this matter be referred to Cabinet. I'd just like to avoid any ambiguity. Are you doing the same as the seconder?
Yes, Councillor Jeffrey and I did discuss this. Clearly, this is something that should be referred directly to Cabinet for their further consideration.
So that's a yes. Thank you.
In accordance with the Council Procedure Rule 12.9.1, there will now be a debate on the motion during which the motion may be amended or withdrawn. Can I just finish? If the member moving the motion so proposes and the member seconding the motion agrees, I will call for a vote on whether to refer the matter directly to the Cabinet for consideration. If the Council so resolves, the motion shall be referred. If the Council refuses to so resolve, the motion shall be deemed to have fallen. At the conclusion of the debate, in accordance with Procedure Rule, okay, so I don't need to go any further with that. Okay, that's good. Okay. Right. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've heard...
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Go on, Tony. Councillor Harwood.
We've heard a lot of warm words this evening regarding the need to protect the environment, to rein in climate change. But we all have an opportunity tonight to actually make a bit of a difference. We're talking here about the biggest loss of ancient woodland for many, many decades in the whole United Kingdom if this quarry extension goes ahead. The implications for biodiversity from the destruction of woodland habitat, its soils, its the hypergean wildlife that lives underneath the woodlands and so on, which is undisturbed, will be profound. The amount of carbon that will be released from those soils, from the loss of those trees, will be immense. Even more if, as we know, 90% of the rock that will be dug out will be used to build roads, so you're not only, you're adding insult to injury. However, I really want to reflect some of the points that Councillor English made. The National Planning Policy Framework sets an immensely high bar for the loss of ancient woodlands and other irreplaceable habitats. And it describes an application having to be wholly exceptional. And as well as being wholly exceptional, and in the footnote, it talks about nationally significant infrastructure and so on. And also there needs to be a compensation strategy which is acceptable to support it. And the reason for that is in the whole of the United Kingdom, we retain 2.5% of our ancient woodland cover. Almost all of the terrestrial habitats of the British Isles were woodland. We have got 2.5% of that land cover left with woodland, with ancient woodland. And we lecture third world countries about their loss of woodland. We are the fifth or sixth wealthiest nation in the world, and we're still looking at removing that 2.5% of our precious ancient woodland coverage. And we sadly have become an outlier in retaining support for this quarry extension. The MPs, Helen Grant and Tracy Crouch, have objected strongly. Tunbridge and Morling Borough Council, who are getting very little of their ancient woodland damaged, they've objected. It's Maidstone are just basically saying, you know, tear out our environment. And, you know, and some of the national organisations, the Forestry Commission, the Woodland Trust, these are not kind of radical organisations, and they're all crying foul on this. And just as, my parting note on this is that once ancient woodland is lost, that land is fair game for development. And if anyone thinks that former quarry land by the Hermitage Lane
Councillor Harwood
is going to retain, is not going to be covered
Time.
in housing in a few years, I'm prepared to take a bet. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gooch.
Thank you, Chairman, Mr. Mayor. I thought it quite right that I should actually get up and speak because my ward, Barming and Thiessen, will actually be the most affected. However, this is a truly national issue. The point I would like to make is that the consultation that the County Council carried out was an evidence-gathering consultation. So they asked various statutory consultees, of which we are merely one, the principles against what their proposed allocation, what their considerations would have to be. They wanted to know what all the hurdles would be that would needed to be crossed. So naturally, I say we, meaning representing the full council, we said, well, yes, you've got to consider the wildlife sites, the SSI, and all the other things. We weren't supporting. This is the bit I don't quite understand. We were asked what were the professional hurdles would need to be crossed. Now, I readily confess that our response was considerably understated, and I certainly take the points that were made vastly understated, but we were not supporting. We were stating what the issues would have to be that the County Council would have to make. And in fact, there was such a stink about it, not just because of what we said, but by what all the other people said, the Tunbridge and Morling people, Woodland Trust, you name it. That's why the County Council's going out again to consultation. That is when we would hopefully have another crack at the whip. We will be able to put our views forward then, and I very much hope that our response will be far more robust and pick up the very points that my colleagues across the floor have very eloquently talked about. Take it on board fully. But let's do it at the right time. We haven't been supporting anything. We've been putting up what the rules are, what needs to be looked at very, very carefully. And let's face it, KCC might come to a conclusion, but it'll be the Secretary of State that makes the decision. But certainly, we will have another crack at the whip. Our message given to KCC was correct. It just wasn't quite good enough and it wasn't robust enough. So where it says here, we therefore need to be sure that the right message is given to KCC. We did, it just wasn't enough. And that the Cabinet reconsider its support for KCC's plan. We never supported it. Cabinet never supported it. So on that basis, as passionately as I feel about it, I won't be voting for this recommendation.
Time, Councillor
Thank
Gooch.
you. Well timed.
Thank you. Now it's Councillor Harper next, please. Then Councillor Kimmins.
As a resident over in West Maidstone, I go to this site quite a lot when I'm walking my dog, and I know it's, you know, well loved and a well used area. And as I said earlier in my speech to the leaders' report, it's one of the few areas where people do get really good access to a natural environment, so ancient woodland, of which there's very, very little in this borough, and very little ancient woodland, which is actually within walking distance of our urban area. And so therefore I would hope that this council would do everything it can do to object to the Kent County Council proposal to use this site for a quarry and to keep it as an ancient woodland. Once lost, it's never coming back. Thank you.
Councillor Harper. Councillor Kimmins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My ward sits where virtually, mine and Peter's ward sits virtually where the entrance is to the quarry. And unfortunately, a majority of the lorry drivers do not follow the actual signs from the quarry. They decide that they're going to go past the District General Hospital. So if this quarry is made bigger, then there's going to be more lorry movements and there's going to be more lorries full out in the law. So that's my view. Thank you.
Thank you. So Cleater, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm speaking on behalf of my group in support of this motion, and I agree with Councillor Harwood. Once that quarry is finished, there will be dense housing. I mean, forget about whether there's sinkholes all round there, which we all know there is, and it's not suitable for housing. Developers will be along there like a red rash. Now, my ward isn't anywhere near that, but that doesn't mean to say that people throughout the borough are not passionate about this. Ancient woodland is ancient woodland. The soil is the issue. It can't be replaced. I was on overview and scrutiny. I didn't witness any special reasons why we should overturn any rules and regulations and allow that to happen. Now, I'm aware that Gallagher's are talking about bringing 130 jobs to the area, but do you know what? There are some things that are irreplaceable, and ancient woodlands is one of them. And as someone who was brought up in an area that was decimated by development, I don't think, in all honesty, as a councillor in this borough, that we should not be sending a message that says we oppose this. We're looking out on a limb here. We're looking out totally out of kilter with opinion. We're here to represent the people of Maidstone. And anyone who looks at public opinion on this knows that this is something that people don't want. It's horrendous along Hermitage Lane with the housing that's already there. I agree with Councillor Kimmins, the level of traffic that's along there, the closure of Hermitage Lane, the problems we have getting ambulances through to the hospital. It's just, I'm sorry, it's a no-brainer, but my group will be voting for this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Cleater. No. Okay, as there doesn't appear to be anybody else that wishes to speak, Councillor... there is one, yes. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I came to this council, I took assurances from established colleagues, regardless of our political differences, on our competence in procedures, our partnership in good faith with collective best efforts. In some cases, a description that matches my experience. But in regard to Oakenwood and the Minerals Plan, following the Pied Pack meeting, the second letter written on behalf of the Cabinet was called in by these councillors. So much for calling in. It was asserted 4 times during the overview and scrutiny meeting 19th of September that the letter in question had certainly been sent long previously and that the KCC consultation had moved on. One councillor's purple passage conjured the metaphorical horse having so long bolted its stable it would have left Kent entirely, only to be found in a far distant county. No correction to these repeated errors was ever offered, although there is some small attempt I see in the papers distributed this very day. During the meeting, the chairman asked the letter's author whether it might be possible for MBC to engage with Kent County Council in a valid manner, either by writing a different letter or by engaging further in a different part of the process. In both ways, was the clear reply. It transpired after the meeting was over, and only in response to further questions asked here in full council, that it was the first and not the second letter that was referred to in the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. A collective surprise to all the other participants. As for the second letter, it had not been ratified at that time. The supposedly errant horse was safely at home, eating its native oats. Its stable door still latched. After the Overview and Scrutiny resolution and whipped vote that no further action to be taken, we find this letter was in fact sent off, but not at all amended in the ways indicated to be best. Competence in procedures, best efforts, acts in good faith, Mr Mayor, all sadly wanting. I was also flabbergasted to hear at a later training meeting that MBC councillors would not expect to hear planning proposals involving mining in this district. An innocent category mistake I will allow. Who exactly bears what responsibility, be that in neglect, weakness or deliberate fault, is for others to say. But should we accept that those here who also sit at KCC can reasonably claim to assure this council that proper representation will be made regarding the care of Oakenwood while telling protesters to calm down? I'm struggling with that, Mr Mayor. Residents are certainly angry, for as things stand, the chainsaws are certainly circling Oakenwood, and the mining explosives are as good as primed. Shall the tracks of excavators and rock crushers soon tread in Barming's Woodlands Green? No, Mr Mayor, this motion is no futile gesture somehow out of place. Therefore, I support a formal vote on the motion, Mr Mayor, that significant harm may be averted. Thank you.
Much indeed for that.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In my area, I've been involved in actually getting designation for 2 pieces of woodland for ancient woodland status. It's very difficult to do. You have to prove that circumstantially, if you don't have hard evidence, and you have to convince Natural England that they've been woodland since the 1600s. It's quite a high bar, but when you think about the time from the 1600s to now, that's actually quite a precious resource that's stayed like that. And the biodiversity that's been nurtured by those woodlands in those hundreds of years can be wiped out very easily. So I really do hope that people will send this message. This is a message, it's a powerful message. If the Secretary of State makes the decision, let it be that he's aware of how strongly we think about this. And I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm going to paraphrase Manic Street Preachers by saying, if you tolerate this, then your woodland will be next. My woodland is small. If this goes, almost any woodland in the borough across all wards is at risk.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Grigg.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to get into the technicalities or the legalities of what is right and what is wrong. We know this is a national issue. It's going to be a national issue. And sometimes as councillors, we get really frustrated because we don't feel that locally we're listened to, that locally we don't have the power to override national government over things. And I think what Councillor Harwood said was true. This is our opportunity to do this. I know that we have a huge responsibility to the homeless, to get affordable housing, to do everything that we've got to do. But please, please, we have a responsibility to the biodiversity. We have a responsibility to ancient woodland, 1600s. It's not just the trees, and I'm glad you said it, Councillor Cleater, it's the soil. Please, and I can tell you that we're talking about Oakenwood tonight, but I'm fighting a developer who is biting in my area to go into an ancient woodland. And I'm sick of it. I'm not going to sit here and just debate it. Let's, for God's sake, make a decision, make a stand, and let KCC know that Maidstone Borough Council and Maidstone are not against the destruction of our countryside and our ancient woodlands.
Thank you, Councillor Grigg. Any others? No. Councillor Jeffrey, can you sum up, please?
Thank you. I will keep this brief. Thank you for all of those comments. Councillor Gooch, I really would urge you to reread the letters and what you were asked. We were asked to give an opinion on the site and it being developed. This is a national issue. It is nationally important, and this council does need the opportunity to express its opinion. So hopefully that's what is happening right now. So I do urge all councillors to support the motion. I would like to propose a procedural motion for a recorded name vote on this, please.
Okay, members, if I might ask for a little bit of quiet. So, just to remind you, the purpose of the vote is to decide whether or not to send this matter to the Cabinet. So I'll be asking each councillor whether they wish to vote for or against. Or indeed, thank you, Councillor English, they wish to abstain. Okay, so if I may start with Councillor Bartlett.
Against.
Councillor Blackmore. Councillor Bryant.
Against.
Councillor Burton. Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Cleater.
For.
Councillor Coates. Councillor Conyard.
For.
Councillor Cook. And Councillor Cooper. Councillor Cox. Councillor Eagle.
For.
Councillor English. Councillor Forecast.
Against.
Councillor Garton.
Against.
Councillor Gooch. Councillor Grigg.
For.
Councillor Harper. Councillor Harwood.
For.
Councillor Hasty. Councillor Hinder.
Against.
Councillor Holmes.
Against.
Councillor Jeffrey.
For.
Councillor Jones. Councillor Joy.
For.
Councillor Cadker.
For.
Councillor Kimmons.
For.
Councillor Natchball.
For.
Councillor McKenna.
Against.
Councillor Mumford.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Nagy.
For.
Councillor Newton.
For.
Councillor Parfitt-Reed. Councillor Perry.
Against.
Councillor Reid. Councillor Reardon.
Against.
Councillor Robertson.
For.
Councillor Rose. Councillor Round.
Against.
Councillor Russell. Councillor J. Sams. Councillor T. Sams. Councillor Spooner.
Against.
Councillor Springett.
Abstain.
Councillor M. Thompson. Councillor S. Thompson.
For.
Councillor Trubinsky.
Against.
Councillor Webb. Councillor D. Wilkinson.
For.
Councillor J. Wilkinson.
For.
And Councillor T. Wilkinson.
For.
Thank you. We'll just add those numbers up. Thank you for your patience. If I can just say that the votes for were 28, against 21 and abstentions 2, which means that the matter is now referred to the Cabinet for further consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we just quieten down a bit so we can move on? Oh. So 19. Right. I call upon Councillor Harper to move the motion. Can we have one conversation, please? I call for Councillor Harper to move the motion relating to Maidstone Leisure Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You've all received the briefing note, but I'll just point out that just under a year ago, on the 6th of December, the then Economic, Culture and Leisure Policy Advisory Committee received a report on the future of Maidstone Leisure Centre with a number of options to either retain a central leisure centre, have a hub and spoke model, or a dispersal of services. And despite a recommendation being made that the executive be recommended to adopt a central facility and a new build facility, and that work be undertaken to do a fully costed proposal, that was rejected by the Conservatives and failed, and no decision was made in terms of the future of the leisure centre at that meeting. Coming up a bit more up to date, in 7th of February this year, the Economic, Culture and Leisure Policy Advisory Committee, at their meeting to discuss this, there was an amendment was made to set a deadline so that we would get a proposed timetable so that by 2031 we would either have a fully refurbished leisure centre or a new leisure centre, and that would then be opened by that point. Again, the Conservative group voted against the clear timetable at that point, and no decision was taken. It's now 9 months later, and there's been no progress. In the forward plan, which is being presented next week to the relevant Policy Advisory Committee, there is no planned date for any report in terms of reporting on progress and moving the issue on in terms of a replacement or upgrade to the existing leisure centre. In this vacuum we face, the current building is rapidly nearing the end of its economic life. Indeed, since 2022-23, the maintenance budget has been increased by £1 million a year to look after an increasingly ageing building. We are told that options are too expensive, but if nothing is done, we will end up not having a leisure centre in Maidstone. Something ultimately needs to be done before the cost of this before this building becomes too expensive to maintain economically. The briefing note you've had before you is useful. The minor investment of £2 million will improve the entrance area and cafe and will help to reduce heating costs. So that in itself is to be welcomed, but that's not enough. The briefing note again refers to the 2031 date, which, as I say, in February this year, the administration refused to accept as a date we need to have a new or updated facility by. The residents of Maidstone deserve certainty of the continuation of the Moat Park Leisure Centre for their town and borough. All we're asking for, and I'm not asking for much tonight, we're just asking that by February next year that we receive a clear timetable on the process and a clear indication of when the relevant decision-making points will be, so that by 2031, in only 7 years' time, we can either have a fully refurbished or a brand new leisure centre fit for the needs of the middle, what will be by then, heading towards the middle of the 21st century, not what we have now, something which was designed for the middle of the 20th century. So, you know, when you work back from that, you realise that to go with either option, there's a lot of work to be done. You have to get planning permission. Prior to that, you will have to appoint architects and a project team. They have to look at the various options and methodologies and do all the preliminaries. So whilst 2031 sounds a long way away, to actually achieve that date, which is, as I say, 7 years away, you need to have a clear idea of when you're making all the decisions now, and it needs to be clearly planned out. So as I say, all we're asking for is that a report come forward identifying how we will achieve that date. So I just formally move the recommendation, as is on the agenda paper, that the Cabinet Member for Communities, Leisure and Arts provide a full progress report on the options to the Communities, Leisure and Arts Policy Advisory Committee no later than its meeting on February 2024, including an agreed timetable on the process and a key decision-making timeline as to when a final decision is required to ensure that either a full refurbished or a new build is completed, and it should say there, by 2031. I so move. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. Yes, Councillor Coates, please.
Yes. Hello. I would like to formally second the motion and agree with Councillor Harper's comments. Thank you.
In accordance with the Council Procedure Rule 12.9.1, there will be now be a debate on the motion, during which the motion may be amended or withdrawn. As with the previous motion, at the conclusion of the debate, in accordance with Procedure Rule 12.9.3, if there is no proposal to refer the matter directly to the Cabinet, I will refer the matter to the relevant Policy Advisory Committee, having sought advice from officers. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thank Councillor Harper for his very full motion regarding the Leisure Centre. Councillor Harper has sat on CLA PAC and its predecessor, Earl Committee, for some time. And for those that haven't here, I trust the briefing note sets out the background, current position and what's previously been considered by members of both committees. The Leisure Centre service contract and the centre itself are two separate things, and whilst their futures will inevitably align, they should currently remain distinct, for one reason mainly, as the service contract also covers the running of the Adventure Zone in Moat Park and the recently acquired Lock Meadow Health Club. The CLA PAC has already had a report on where we are with the current negotiations, and a final report is already programmed into the January CLA PAC for its consideration and advice. I would also like to remind members that the committee system yielded nothing but a vague concept of a new centre. No plans, no planning, no detailed facility inclusion was passed over to me when I began my portfolio role. The CLA PAC has previously seen the timeline. I reiterate my commitment to leisure in our borough and to health and well-being, which remains one of our strategic priorities. I also assure you of my absolute commitment to spending taxpayers' money wisely. The current minor practical improvements option was supported at PAC, represents value for money, increases the facility choice on offer and energy efficiency, and sustains the current centre. Meanwhile, work continues further on energy efficiency options and the costing and design of a new facility to the timescales already set out. But you cannot commit to a date when you are spending this much money. I personally, therefore, do not see the point of providing a further full progress report when I've already done so, and I will continue to do so. I've always worked with my PAC, and I will continue to do that. Presumably, the proposer of this motion would then consider sending it to the PAC for January, and then we'd have to consider it alongside my report, which we'll already be considering. So I would urge the proposer to withdraw this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor English.
I have a great deal of sympathy for Councillor Harper in this issue. I mean, the leisure centre isn't actually in my ward, but it's adjacent to my ward, and if anyone has any direct effects by it, there are High Street and Chetway North residents, Councillor Cooper represents, amongst others. The fact of the matter is that we should clearly make a plan for the leisure centre at the earliest opportunity. The problem is it's very dependent on circumstances we actually aren't aware of at this time. We haven't had the local government settlement yet. We don't know what it is. We don't know what our financial situation is. And most importantly of all, I suppose, in relation to the capital programme, there are a lot of questions we need to answer about the 1,000 homes, affordable homes strategy. I think whilst I'm not downplaying the issue of the leisure centre, I think it's fair to say that our whole capital strategy as a council going forward is going to be very, very dependent on what the costs are going forward of the 1,000 affordable homes. I very much hope and trust that we will be able to address both issues, but it is by far from a certainty at the moment how much capital room for manoeuvre we will have when we see the full cost coming through of the affordable homes programme. And I don't think there's any great will in this council to actually row back on the affordable homes programme, which in the fullness of time will hopefully save the council some money in terms of homelessness costs. So I think we need to know a lot more about what's going to be in next year and its budget and budgets going forward, not least in the capital programme, before we're in a position to make any decisions, even on the time scale of when decisions are going to be made. It's not that we don't need to make those decisions, we really, really, really do, but I can't see how you separate them from given the information we don't have at the moment, and without that information it's pretty meaningless to actually even try and arrive at a timetable. So I think we need to actually reconsider as a council how we address this, but setting an artificial timescale of February is probably not the way to do it, but we do need to consider it cross-party as quickly as we reasonably can once the information becomes available.
Thank you, Councillor English. Councillor Burton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to support largely what Councillor English has just said, but one thing I would say is that 1,000 affordable homes and a leisure centre are not necessarily mutually exclusive in capital plan. And I think, but you know, because the point is that you have to look at the business case in each scenario and then judge prudently what risk we will take financially as a council. And the big game changer with the leisure centre currently is the price of money. When we looked at this carefully last, it was very thin, and I do recall having to explain to Councillor Harper that because it said 30 million in the capital budget, there wasn't 30 million quid languishing in a bank account waiting for a purpose. It was actually an intention to borrow. And that doesn't change, other than the fact that it might be 50 or 60 million we're looking at now. And you look at today's money rates, that could bankrupt this council. There is no shortage of ambition amongst any of us, all sides, and my cabinet member, I think, has said it out really clearly. No shortage of ambition to have the best of the best for Maidstone, leisure centres, and the affordable housing, of course. No shortage, but we have to be financially sensible and, dare I say it, honest with our electorate. Let's not go in promising things that clearly at the moment we don't have a financial mechanism for. It may well be in time, there'll be grant funding available, there'll be this, there'll be that. And let's be really clear, at the moment that surfaces, we'll jump on it. And the plans are quietly being developed as to what it may actually deliver. But financially, let's be realistic, let's be honest.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Burton, Jeffrey, Councillor Jeffrey, and Councillor Nagy after that.
Thank you. I mean, I would really love to see the leisure centre become a carbon zero flagship facility that we could all be proud of. But I worry that we are not seeing the plans, we're not seeing the debate, we're not seeing as Councillor Burton said, the honesty around the priorities. But I really do feel a decision is needed. And if that decision is we can't afford it at the moment, then that needs to be out there in the public domain, but understood very, very clearly by us. So again, this whole debate comes back to my speech earlier, which was sort of centres around, I want to see things moving forward or not moving forward, if that requires a decision not to move it forward. But we're seeing a lack of transparency here, and I really would like to see more of that, please.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Councillor Nagy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've sat on this committee many years, and it came up when Councillor Round was the chairman 2 or 3 years ago, maybe, when money was cheap. We could have borrowed, we could have done something then if we'd been quick enough. But what the trouble is, historically, you have to have a meetings to decide where it's going to go. It takes time, and it could take a year to get where you're going to put it and maybe get a design together. If this is ever going to happen in my lifetime, we need to agree where this new leisure centre would go. And it's usually around by the existing one, or knock the other one down or whatever. We have that discussion every time. And if we don't do it when the money's right, which it was 2 or 3 years ago, when you could borrow $1 million and pay back a 20,000, if I remember right, something like that, when it was dead cheap, we never do it because it takes too long to make a decision where we're going to have it and what design. And maybe we could have some input in, let's agree where to put the thing, next to the one or knock it down. So, and then we can get on, and if we've got a design, because hopefully the designs won't change too much because we want a green design, then when it comes up again, probably whenever, if I'm still a councillor, at least we'll have a place where we're going to put it and maybe some sort of design that we can go out and get a costing for. Because obviously we've missed our chance from it was so enthusiastic when Councillor Brown, we went down the Dover, we saw the state of the art, they was the same as us. They got a superb leisure centre that's very green, used all the time and make £1 million out of it. But the time we thought about discuss where we was going to put it and what design, we missed our chance. And I did say this at that meeting. I wanted to see it go forward, but it takes money and we have to borrow it when it's cheap. And when Mark Green says we can borrow the money and it's green, it's cheap enough, then we go for it. And that's what we have financial advisors for. But when they say it's going to break the bank and we won't get nowhere and costs go on and at the moment, this is not a good time to be doing it. I totally agree that we should have some sort of timetable, but let's just agree where we're going to put it and some sort of design if we can do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nagy. Councillor Cleater.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree actually with what Councillor Jeffrey said. We need to know either way where whether we're going to do it or not. I don't think now is the right time for the very reasons. We haven't had the settlement figures. We don't know where inflation's going to go up or down. But what I would say is what we do know is that one of the concerns that locals have is that if the leisure centre goes, there's going to be housing put there, so we need to nip that one. No, hang on. You can shake your head, David, but that's what the people think in the area. We know, we speak to them. So we need to reassure them that if it were to go, that's not going to happen. But as part of our stated objective on health and well-being, then we should maybe be looking at co-location and get some capital money, for example, from the NHS, to see if we can co-locate services and maybe produce something on a joint basis. Well, I'm glad you think people's health is quite funny on the other side, because we don't on this side, actually. We actually care, and we actually think about how we can work in a time of still austerity about trying to get services that people need. And if co-location is the way forward, and it is elsewhere within this county, then that is something we can look at. But I think at the moment, we can't support this motion as is, because I think it's committing us to something and we haven't got all the information. But I think we need to look creatively at how we can have a leisure centre, but possibly co-locate it with other services, as I'm sure the Chief Executive knows, because I know Chief Executives up and down the area are being approached by organisations to co-locate services there.
Thank you, Councillor Cleater. Councillor Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, leisure centres are important, absolutely. But speaking as someone who has been homeless, I know what being homeless means. I know what it does to people. And whatever money we have, I feel passionately that we should think about what we're doing as far as the homeless and what our finances are doing for people who are homeless. And I think, having a home and a roof over your head is probably more important than going to the leisure centre, although obviously that is important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rose. Thank you. Claudine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, I'm not going to labour the point, but given that it is my portfolio, and I hope that you do trust that I actually do put quite a lot of effort into the work on it. Lack of transparency, I think, is actually quite rude. Everything has gone through my pack, and I've worked completely with my pack. You don't sit on my pack, but I'm sure that if you read everything, I would hope that you would see that I've been completely transparent all the way through. 3 years, we still didn't have a location. So no location was handed over from the committee system. The work is ongoing. We are going to other authorities. We're seeing where they are. I do really want to investigate, and this will take longer, the passive house concept of a leisure centre. It will cost more, but I think it completely aligns with our biodiversity and climate action change plan. That will take longer, but that is something that I do want to carry on the work. There are lots of different strands to the work. So there's the strand on the service contract, there's the strand on the building, there's the strand on the minor practical improvements. They're all running continuously. And please be assured that I hope that the housing and the leisure centre is not mutually exclusive, and we need to work on the project itself. When the project is ready for the pack to see, and there is something to see, the work is going on, please be assured I will bring it.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. We have Councillor Trubinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Interesting. I hear lots of talk about spending millions on the new leisure centre, money being spent on the town centre. Don't hear much about sports and leisure facilities for the rural areas. And I'd just like to go on record and say that it's about time we started looking at doing something for places like Headcorn. That's it. Thank you.
Councillor Coates, you earlier reserved your right to speak. Do you wish to take that up?
Councillor Coates formally moved it. I would like to formally reply to the debate as a move of the motion.
Mr. Harper, would you like to sum up?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it's been an interesting discussion. I think there's a slight misunderstanding. The issue of the Serco contract and that running to 2031 is completely separate to whether beyond then we've had a new leisure centre, a refurbished leisure centre or whatever. That is a contractual issue to take, as I say, the current operation contract through to 2031. And we had that report at the last pack, and I know it's on the agenda for the one, I think, in January. It's in the forward plan. It's rather disappointing to hear a situation where only earlier we were talking about pride in the borough and people wanting to live in Maidstone, and now we're seen to be, if we're not careful, heading to a situation where you can have a house in Maidstone, you can have a job in Maidstone, but there won't be anywhere to do any exercise or leisure activity in Maidstone because you'll be using a building which at some point will not be able to be kept open. It's rapidly ageing, its equipment is ageing, it was designed for the middle of the previous century. You know, we're not living in the 20th century, this is the 21st century, and we're heading towards the third decade of it relatively soon. We need facilities which match up with what people need. We need to make a commitment, and it might, if it ultimately is going to be a commitment that we won't deliver it, then I think the people need to know that we will keep a facility built in the 70s going along as it can do, and at some point when it closes, luckily the council's taken over the David Lloyd Centre at Lockmeadow, and that will end up being our leisure facility in this borough. But really, honestly, earlier tonight we talked about pride in our borough, and so now we're talking about whether we can even have a leisure facility. The Sports Council did a lot of work, as Claudine will know, to look into how a facility could work. They made it very clear in the reports which have been presented to the committees that the running costs of a new centre could be up to £2 million less than it's costing the council now. That's based on the evidence of sites such as Dover and other areas where the Sports Council's invested in new buildings. £2 million 2 or 3 years ago would service quite a considerable debt. I do think we really need to give serious consideration as to what are we going to do. We have a policy making Maidstone more active. Another councillor asked about the rural areas. Part of that strategy is about investing in the rural areas. When I was chair of the relevant committee, we did do that. I went to Staplehurst and met with John Perry and Louise Bryce and looked at how we could improve rural facilities. But we need a leisure centre. And unless we make decisions at some stage, we will fail to have a leisure centre just because it will end up not being safe to keep going.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. In the light of their there's nobody else. In the light of where we are, we should refer this to the relevant pack to discuss this further. Come back to us next meeting. Right. 20. Let's, where are we? Whoop. Right, that's where I am now. I call upon the leader of the council to move that this report be noted.
Thank you,
Is that
Mr. Mayor.
seconded? No? All right, I'll let you
Thank
do
you,
it.
Mr.
Go
Mayor.
on.
I refer you to page 60, where you find my report concerning urgent decisions that have been taken, and I duly ask that you would note them.
Is that seconded? Councillor Cooper. Okay. Is it agreed? No, thank you. Conclusion of discussion and voting. I declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much, members.